Hey guys, what's going on? It's Eli with my dad. And yes, finally reviewing the long-awaited Avengers film, right next to the last one, of course, Infinity War. These two films that everybody had been waiting for a long time since the MCU began. And of course, like with the last two Avengers films, fantastic and all like heroes coming together, but to make it more epic, just more and more heroes joining forces and taking on Thanos, of course. And as Thanos was teased in the end of the first Avengers film. And that's right, we're finally reviewing Avengers Endgame. All right, take the spot.
I watched it last night and had forgotten we were doing this.
As we record this, he watched it last night.
I watched it again last night, so it's still fresh in my head. And the takeaways from the movie, for me, the whole series of Marvel movies, first of all, they're all dovetailed together perfectly.
Right.
I mean, you really need to see all of them from the very beginning and move through the whole storyline process to get to that end game. And even before the Endgame title was announced, I just had a feeling it was going to be called Endgame because Tony Stark references that in Infinity War. He says
Age of Ultron.
It
was mentioned in Age of Ultron, but then Doctor Strange.
Yep, it was Age of Ultron. In fact, that he said this is the Endgame. And so I thought that has to be the title of the last movie is Endgame because it is the end.
And Doctor Strange in Infinity War said we're in the Endgame now.
Exactly. It all played out. It all dovetailed together nicely.
Oh yeah.
And kind of jumping ahead, the climactic scene is when there's Captain America, Iron Man, Thor. I mean, they're just broken.
Yeah.
Thanos has broken them. And here are all his warriors, but they're still, Captain America, he tightens his shield and he's just like, he's ready to go. And he's going to go down fighting.
Yeah, and let's not get to the ending just yet because, actually it's really cool because the opening to the film, we pick up right on Clint. Yeah, because we hadn't seen him in the last Avengers film, and we see, because, his entire family, turning to dust, the blip.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and of course, the aftermath of what happened in Avengers and Infinity War, and we also see, Stark and Nebula still stuck in space, but then Captain Marvel showing up.
And it was exactly as I thought it would be. When
Makes sense.
I said in Infinity War at the end, I said, somehow Captain Marvel is going to go, Carol Danvers is going to go into space and bring Tony Stark back. And sure enough, that's what happened.
Yes.
And it was that in itself was a climactic scene.
Oh, yeah.
When he's sitting there and he's, going to run out of oxygen very soon.
Yeah.
And he opens his eyes. And as soon as I saw it in the theater, I knew when that light hit his face, I said, that's Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel has come to save him. And then sure enough, when you see him, it's just like, you're just like, oh, it's that moment, and you see the look on his face. He thinks he's seeing an angel. He thinks he's died and he's seeing an angel. That's exactly what's going through his mind, right? Mm-hmm. So then you see the reunion between him and Pepper, and that was really emotional.
Yeah, and Pepper did survive.
Yeah, she did survive because he was afraid, that she did not survive the Thanos snap, but she did.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a really emotional reunion. And
also, when Tony said to, Steve, that he lost the kid, and Steve was like, Tony, we lost.
Yeah, exactly.
They lost everybody, and they lost the fight, basically.
Yeah.
And a touching moment between Rocket and Nebula.
Yeah, when he took her hand. It was just that was the only family he had left, because he didn't know if anybody else was alive.
Yes, exactly.
So, and at that point they were, because they had been snapped out of existence.
Yes. Except for Gamora, because, we know what happened to her.
Of course.
So, anybody that did not get killed by the snap and they died in a different way, from her and Loki.
Exactly.
So, and Heimdall as well.
Exactly.
But yeah, and thus, it's pretty funny because Tony, saying to Rocket, "I thought you were Build-A-Bear."
That was
It's
funny.
funny.
You know, he says up until this very second, I thought you were Build-A-Bear.
Maybe
And
I
he said,
am.
Maybe I am. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It's amazing how Robert Downey Jr. how he looks in that film at the beginning, because it's obvious he must have lost weight or something.
he had to have lost weight. He had to have done a rapid weight loss to get to look like that, because even his eyes, if you notice his eyes, they're red. They had him bloodshot, around the edges.
Yeah.
He was just, I mean, he looked rough, and he looked
Absolutely.
he literally looked emaciated. So, they did a good job with that. He did a good job. But, of course, I have since read, it's been back and forth about whether or not he'll ever return to the Marvel Universe.
Yeah.
I don't think he will.
But
there's always that possibility.
yeah, and thus,
If the money's right.
like with
Maybe.
and the surviving what's left of the Avengers, like they go and find where Thanos is hiding.
Yeah, and when they do, Captain Marvel just breaks bad and just, grabs him, gets him down.
Yeah.
And Thor comes in, chops his arm off with the glove.
Yeah, the gauntlet.
The gauntlet,
And all and the stones are missing.
He
destroyed he used the stones to destroy the stones.
Right. But he's so arrogant, that he said it nearly killed me, and he's acting like he's trying to. It's almost like he's trying to garner sympathy, and you can't feel sympathy for him, or he's not even. He's a monster.
Yeah.
So, what ends up happening is, of course, that Nebula, she, it looks like she's making peace with her father. Her father's making peace with her, and I mean, just in a split second, Thor decapitates him with Stormbreaker, and
Yep.
like, what did you do? And he says, I went for the head.
I went for the head.
And then then it's over, and now all of a sudden it's 5 years later.
Yep.
And
like, wow, because like 5 years later, like, just what the heck?
Here's Cap setting, doing like counseling these people.
One of the Russo brothers makes a cameo.
Exactly.
And one of the Russo brothers, one of them, their daughter, has a role in this as one of Clint's kids.
Oh, okay.
Did you not know that?
I didn't know that. No.
Oh, well, I know.
Interesting.
So yeah, I know.
So they're showing where their lives are 5 years later, and then of course we find that Ant-Man actually did survive.
Yeah, especially because like we saw what happened to him in Ant-Man Wasp.
Exactly.
He was stuck in there in the quantum realm.
So he comes out. He comes to the Avengers compound.
Well, before he does that, actually, a moment where he sees like what has happened, asking a kid like,
what happened,
and then he's reunited with Cassie, which that was a tear-jerking moment.
That was an emotional moment for me in the theater. It really was, because he was seeing his daughter after 5 years, and she's
all grown up.
And the last time you saw her, she's this little girl, and you realize he has missed 5 years. He's missed 5 years of her life.
It's hard
of her growing up.
It's hard to process for him, and it's hard to process for her.
He's practically missed her childhood, which is really sad.
Yeah.
But at least they're back together. Mm-hmm. So and then he looks and says, you're so big. He's just overwhelmed. But that was a well played out scene. And then of course, he goes to the compound. As I was saying, I jumped ahead a little bit.
It was shown in one of the trailers, actually.
Yeah, and he tells him, he says, I've got this idea. He says, what if? It's sort of a what if. We could go back in time and change everything.
Yeah, and it was pretty funny. He asked he asked like, is that somebody's sandwich? Like, oh God, I'm starving.
He grabs the sandwich, but he says,
he was stuck in there for 5 hours.
Exactly, which they said, they were thinking 5 years. He says, no, you don't get it. He says, everything is so microscopic. He says, I was only in there 5 hours. So by the time he comes out, 5 hours for him, 5 years for everybody else.
Yeah, it must have been painful for him to like just be floating out there. You know?
For 5 hours.
I know.
And the only thing the only way he got back was a rat that flipped the switch and caused the time, their time machine, whatever they call it, to come back on again.
Yeah.
But
no, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so it was funny because he says, I know this sounds crazy, when he's explaining it to Captain America and Black Widow, and she says, Scott, she says, I get emails from a raccoon. So she says, nothing sounds strange to me. So it was really cool. And then, of course, you see where Tony is 5 years later.
Yeah,
he's married to Pepper. He's got a little girl.
Yes,
he's living the life. He lives on a lake. He's got a nice home, and just take living a good family life. And here comes Captain America, Black Widow, and Ant-Man to try to recruit him, and he's like, no, I'm not doing this because he's not going to take a chance.
No.
And the conversation between Tony and Scott Lang, Tony Stark and Scott Lang is hilarious because he's like saying, do you really think, are you trying to tell me that you think, that what happened? I think he says something about Back to the Future is real or whatever. He's like, no.
Mentionings of films that have to do with time travel.
Yeah, and calls it a time heist, which I thought was funny.
And up to 5 years, like Bruce, like he's like both him and the Hulk.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it's nice that in these two Avengers films, and I've stated this, like in Infinity War and in this, we got a lot more of Bruce Banner.
We sure did, and I like him.
And I think rightfully so.
I like him now as Professor Hulk. I wasn't sure how I was going to react to that, but when I saw him in that character doing that, I really liked it.
It worked.
It does. It works really well. But
best of both worlds, as he says.
Yeah. Every time I watch the scene where he's eating breakfast, I get hungry because he's eating sausage links and eggs, and it's like some kind of a flour tortilla wrapped up with cheese or something. Oh,
and it was funny when the kids approached him wanting to take a picture.
Yeah,
and like that's Ant-Man.
Yeah, Scott Lang is like, you want to get a picture with me? I'm Ant-Man. And they're like, no, we don't even know who you are. And he's just like, just take the camera.
Take the phone.
Yeah,
take the GD phone.
Yeah, he says that, which I hate to say it, but it actually made it funnier because he was just like, he was getting ticked off because they didn't want a picture with him, and he was just like, okay, fine, whatever.
Yeah, even like say at up to 5 years, like another noticeable thing, Captain Marvel actually got a haircut.
Yeah, which and shaved, which looked good.
Interesting thing is like the shots with her in the beginning with the long hair. Yeah, that wasn't actually Brie Larson's hair. That was CG. Which did look pretty good.
Yeah, it did.
Even like say, like at one point, Bruce and Rocket visiting Thor in the new Asgard.
Right. That was hilarious because he had let himself go, to say the least. I mean, he had a beer gut where he was drinking beer all the time, drinking alcohol and eating snacks, but he was depressed. He felt like he had failed, even though he killed Thanos. He killed him at the wrong time.
He did, yeah. But it wasn't his fault. With the whole thing that Thanos did.
No, I mean, when you saw how he killed him or thought he killed him in Infinity War, it looked pretty much like he finished him off because he buried that thing in his chest.
Yeah,
and he pushed it further in.
And like that didn't kill him.
It still didn't kill him, So he was almost indestructible.
He was.
He was very nearly indestructible.
Yeah.
So anyway.
It's pretty funny, like, it was funny, like, before that of the sequence with Asgard, Scott was trying to eat a taco because the ship landing blew, and then right before Bruce left with Rocket, he gave him a taco.
Yeah, and I love that song they played that, I'm trying to get the tune in my head. I'm not going to sing it, but it was really the music was well placed in that movie.
It was. And then and Bruce introducing Valkyrie to Rocket, and she doesn't care. So.
Exactly.
And Thor being fat, that was practical. That was a practical suit that Chris Hemsworth had.
Yes, it was.
And Rocket, saying you look like melted ice cream. that was a hilarious line.
It was.
And it was funny. We get the appearance of Korg, and he's playing Fortnite, and Thor helps out Korg with this bully online.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
Yeah.
He says, "I'm going to come over there and I'm going to rip your arms off and shove them up your butt." That was so funny.
Yeah, and I think because Banner and Rocket, they do convince Thor, to help out as well.
They do,
and especially because and a moment between Banner, Rhodey, and Scott, like talking about time travel, and Rhodey talking about what if they go back in time and kill baby Thanos, just like as he said, like, okay, first off, that's horrible.
Yeah, it is, because he's basically saying, take the umbilical cord and wrap it around his neck, and kill him. That's what he's doing, and it is, he's saying it's horrible, and he's like, it's Thanos. It's like, why is it horrible? It's Thanos.
And that's where like even Scott mentioning like the time travel movies, Back to the Future,
exactly.
And did he also mention the hot tub movie?
Yeah, hot tub time machine. He's going through Star Trek,
and mentioned Die Hard.
Scott Lang goes, and Die Hard. Oh no, that's not that's not a time travel movie.
Yeah. And when like Banner talks about like I guess your future becomes your past, blah blah blah, and then Scott's saying, so Back to the Future is a bunch of bullcrap.
Yeah, exactly. That was hilarious, but it was emotional for Hawkeye.
For Hawkeye,
to go back when he did the time test.
That sequence where Natasha brings Hawkeye in, and he goes by Ronin.
Yeah, he'd gone by Ronin, and he killed all these gangs, all these bad guys, which really is not bad, because he rid the world of a lot of bad guys. But the way he was going about it was just
that ties directly into the Hawkeye series.
Yes,
the whole thing of Ronin.
Exactly.
And especially because when they're testing out the time machine, like quantum realm, like Scott coming out as a baby, a kid, and an old man.
Exactly.
That was pretty funny. And it's funny, like Scott saying, like, my pants are full or something,
No, Scott says, I peed myself.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't know if it was old me or baby me or me.
Either one.
That was really funny.
Yeah. And the whole thing where they all time travel into different locations, each in a different group, like Rhodey and Nebula, they travel into 2014. Well, basically, they're collecting the stones.
Yeah. And Tony Stark,
Steve, Scott, Bruce, they time travel into 2012.
2012, when the Battle of New York was going on.
That's right.
And
then Bruce trying to blend in as Hulk, he
says, tear stuff up, do something.
Exactly.
He says, well, I think it's a bit gratuitous, but all right. And he starts going, and he picks up a motorcycle and throws it and all that. It was pretty funny.
Yeah. And we see a lot. What's really cool, we see a lot more. Like, we see what happens after the Avengers, they catch Loki,
Yeah.
Going into the elevator, and Hawk hates stairs. And we see some familiar faces who we would see in Captain America Winter Soldier. And Steve, future Steve, pretending to be 2012 Steve, and pretending, Hail Hydra.
Yeah.
And
which was smart, because he got their trust, and that's how he got Loki's sepulcher.
And we get an appearance from Robert Redford, his character, who would be a traitor in Winter Soldier.
Exactly, because he was actually part of Hydra.
Yeah.
And nobody knew it. Of course, a lot of people didn't know that S.H.I.E.L.D. was secretly being run by Hydra. So
exactly. And some people that worked at S.H.I.E.L.D. were a part of Hydra. So, and even when, say, Scott had to deactivate Tony's chest piece,
Yeah, to get him to go into AFib or whatever. And
Tony does at one point succeed getting the Tesseract, but of course that fails because of Hawk bursting out. And Loki gets a hold of it.
So then they have to go back to another time.
Loki getting the Tesseract, that ties directly into the Loki series.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. And another thing is, Bruce actually met with the sorcerer,
Yeah.
Tilda Swinton's character.
Yeah, when she realizes, because she knows all timelines. She knows the future, the past, the present.
And she knows that Doctor Strange is going to become
the Sorcerer Supreme at some point.
Exactly.
And she said that she tells Bruce, when she finds out that he gave him the stone, gave Thanos the stone, she said, he must have had a reason. She said he was the best of all of us.
Right.
And that was what was so interesting about it. And she freely gave Bruce that stone.
Yeah, and because even at one point, Bruce actually corrected her on something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also Thor and Rocket traveling into 2013 to Asgard.
And he gets to see his mom again. That was pretty emotional. It was funny, but it was emotional.
Rocket retrieving the Reality Stone from Jane.
Exactly.
Yeah, and of course, Thor's mom knows as well what's going on,
because she was raised by witches. So
exactly. And Thor gets his old hammer back.
Yep, gets his old hammer back, and it's very
Yeah, and the question is like, would the hammer still be there? Like, I don't know, just
oh, absolutely.
okay. Even though he's got it now,
Right.
and the 2014 timeline, because actually, yeah, Rhodey, Nebula, Clint, and Natasha, all four of them, and they split up, and Rhodey and Nebula retrieving the Power Stone from getting, like, you know, before Star-Lord gets it.
Exactly.
It was pretty funny, like, we see from their point of view, and, like, Peter singing, "Come and get your blah, blah, blahs," and, like, Rhodey saying, "So he's an idiot."
Yeah, but it's his reaction. He's just like, he's watching him, and he looks at Nebula, and he goes,
Yeah.
"So, he's an idiot."
Not
She's
really,
like,
but...
yes.
But not really an idiot.
No, but, you know, he's got those headphones on, and he's dancing around, "Come and get your love."
Yeah. So
You know,
what? He loves the music, so...
Exactly.
And for Clint and Natasha, they're retrieving the Soul Stone. And we once again get Red Skull.
Yeah.
And of course, one of them having to sacrifice, you know.
That was
It was both kind of, wouldn't we say it was like kind of both funny and sad?
Yeah. It was
It was like back and forth, just like, gosh.
back and forth. They were trying to fight over who was going to die, basically.
And it made a lot of sense for Natasha. Because what was the point for Clint, you know? He would be reunited with his family.
Well, but Clint felt like he had just done such bad things that he didn't deserve to live. So that was the whole point of that. He was guilt-ridden after what he had done.
But Natasha, you know, sacrificing herself, you know, still emotional.
Very emotional.
Yep. Would that be more emotional than, say, Gamora's death, or both?
I think they were both emotional.
Yeah.
Gamora's death was...
There's no competition on that one.
No, not really. Not really. But, you know, they're both about equal, I'd say.
Exactly. And after all that, you know, all of them coming back, and a sad moment when, you know, like, mourning over Natasha, the loss of Natasha, especially for Bruce.
Yeah.
Even at this point, like they use like some of like Tony's equipment to make their own gauntlet for the stones. It was pretty funny when putting all the stones in. One of my favorite moments, like where Rocket just, you know, boom,
and Tony just turns and looks at him like,
yeah,
I'm gonna kill you.
That startles Tony. I noticed Bruce. I think he was just like, you know, like, really, you know, because I could tell. Just like, that was funny. Thor wants to do it, but, you know, Bruce is the one that does it. He saves the world, basically, bringing everybody back.
Yeah, he does.
But what they don't realize is that what happened in the timeline of 2014, Thanos happened to arrive.
And Nebula changes places with herself.
Yes, I almost forgot about that. And Gamora from 2014 coming in as well.
Yep. And so she wants to prove herself because he realizes that in the future at some point Nebula betrayed him.
Yeah.
And, you know, and tried to undo what he did. So she's desperate to win his trust back. And he's willing to do it because he knows she'll do his bidding.
Exactly.
And not resist him.
Exactly.
So he she opens the time portal to allow him through.
Yeah.
And then we see what happens. You know, Bruce is successful. He brings everybody back, but
then of course disaster strikes,
and Thanos fires on the Avengers compound and destroys it.
Yeah,
completely obliterates it.
Yeah,
to the point that, you know, they're all scattered, and you're not really sure who, if anybody, survived.
But they did all survive.
They all survived, but barely. And
then like. Confrontation between the two Nebulas.
Yes.
And of course, the evil Nebula from 2014 being killed.
Right.
Yep. So.
But Gamora is still the Gamora from the past is now in the present.
Yeah.
So she's going to have to deal with that, and I'm sure we'll see that in the next Guardians of the Galaxy.
Obviously.
The thing that struck me was how they had to change up so quickly when they realized that Thanos was there.
Yeah.
And they had to, you know, they had to get down to it because they knew that he was coming back to get those stones. And they had gathered all the stones, so he had them all there. He didn't have to he didn't have to search for them anymore. He had them all right there.
Exactly. And the fight between, like, Thor, Iron Man, and Steve to Thanos, you know?
Right. Right.
And at one point, Captain America, a big surprise, Captain America wields Thor's hammer.
Yeah, that's the moment when the hammer came to him. Thor says, "I knew it," because he knew from the Infinity War, Infinity War, when from
Age of Ultron.
Age of Ultron,
that was teased. Like
he was able to almost lift that hammer, and Thor
but
was
he was only able, like, he only jerked it a bit.
Yeah, and Thor looked kind of nervous, but as it turned out, he in the end he was worthy, and he did get the hammer.
I knew it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it was interesting how that happened, and then I really thought at one point he was gonna end Thanos right there, because he had the shield, he had the hammer, and he was just
he didn't
double timing.
He didn't finish him.
No, he
not
didn't.
quite.
Thanos almost finished him, in fact.
Yeah.
As I remember somewhere reading that they had originally considered having Thanos decapitate Steve Rogers.
Oh, I don't think I remember hearing that.
It was talked about, but they never did it.
Of course not.
So then we see,
all of Thanos's armies, his army.
It's down to it is just down to where
Steve.
It's Steve, Tony,
Thor,
and Thor, and
then you hear Falcon's voice.
You hear Falcon's voice.
Steve, you copy?
Yeah, Steve.
On your left.
On your left, and then the ring opens up, and then
everybody
the first thing
comes in.
You see him fly through. Then you see Black Panther, King T'Challa,
all the Wakanda people
come through.
King T'Challa.
T'Challa, and then you see all the Wakanda. And I mean, in the movie, when I'm in the movie theater, I was just going, "Oh my gosh, this is the epic battle." And Thanos is going to lose. You knew he was going to lose.
The Guardians, Doctor Strange, Spider-Man.
Everybody comes through. It's like all the
Ravengers, all the Asgard people.
Yes, I was waiting. I mean, I wouldn't have been surprised to see the Batmobile come through the portal, and then Superman fly through, and then that'd have been it.
What about to say Wolverine?
Yeah, Thanos just wave the white flag and just give up right there.
And basically, of course, the Wasp and. Even Pepper showing up as well.
Yeah.
Even Kraglin and Howard the Duck appearing as well.
Yeah.
Even like Black Panther giving the what's it called, like the
war chant.
Yeah, the war chant.
We Bombay.
He Bombay.
We Bombay.
Yeah.
We Bombay.
And Doctor Strange was like, is that all? You wanted more, as Juan says, and then
that was a funny.
Then rises Ant-Man now is Giant Man.
Yeah, exactly.
Hulk, Rocket, and Rhodey.
Yeah, and they're all there. So then it's on.
And then Steve Rogers saying Avengers, and then he whispers assemble.
Yeah.
Finally, he says assemble.
Exactly, and even
say when it cuts when the Age of Ultron cuts to the credits right before he says assemble.
Yeah,
that was funny.
So we go through this battle, and finally, and the Scarlet Witch meets Thanos.
The Scarlet Witch.
She says, "You took everything from me," and he says, "I don't even know you." And then she goes on. She just goes off on him and starts using her powers. And then she starts pulling his armor off. He's hanging up in the air, and he tells his his henchman, his left-hand guy, and I can't remember his name, the character's name for the movie.
Which one?
The one that was so annoying, the one that Tony called "Get Lost, Squidward."
Oh yeah, Ebony.
No, Ebony's not his name.
That's what he called him. That's what he called him. That's the name.
I thought it was the Maul or something like that. The Maul. The Maul. Yeah.
Also, Captain Marvel, of course, appearing.
Exactly, and when that happens, she comes in, they're firing, and you think, oh my gosh, they're just going to destroy everybody.
Yeah.
Because they're firing on everybody on the ground, and then the guns stop, and then the guns readjust, and Tony's like, what's going on? And something's entered the upper atmosphere. Then you see Captain Marvel come in, and the coolest part is when she flies and just splits that ship right in half.
Yeah.
Splits it right in half. And Rocket's like, oh, yeah. He's just getting into it.
Yeah. And then, like, say a moment between Tony and Peter. Tony hugs Peter.
Oh yeah, because he got him back. I mean,
And
this is nice.
yeah, and then like Tony's saying to Steven, like, this is it, right? This is what's supposed to happen. If I tell you, it won't happen.
Yeah.
Even when one moment where like the camera focuses on Doctor Strange's one finger, like the one chance,
Exactly.
that they'll win.
And that's when you get, when the battle continues.
And then one moment where we get all the Marvel women,
and
fighting.
The gauntlets being passed back and forth like a football. I mean, they're running with it, trying to keep it away. It's like they're playing keep away from Thanos.
Black Panther saying Clint's name,
Yeah.
That was a nod to, obviously, in Civil War. So,
exactly. So he when he...
Even when, like, Ant-Man and the Wasp, they're using the van, we hear that car tune. So
one of the funny scenes in that, to me, is when Clint is running with it.
Yeah,
and he gets on the radio.
It's amazing. It's amazing that there are funny scenes in the battle.
And he says, Cap, what do you want me to do with this damn thing? Like, what am I going to do with it? I've got everybody's after it. He wasn't a superhero. He just had mad skills. So
exactly.
he was just trying to get away with it.
And as I said, like, it's amazing that there are funny moments during the battle.
Exactly.
And a moment where Peter is reunited with Gamora, even though it's not the Gamora he knows.
Right.
Yeah. That was funny. And I think like Captain Marvel and Scarlet Witch, they're this close to defeating Thanos, but then it's all to Tony. I mean, Thanos has got a hold of like the gauntlet that they made. Like, I am inevitable. Snapping his fingers, nothing happens. Tony's got the stones.
And Tony has switched out the stones.
And I am Iron Man. And snaps.
Exactly.
And that kills all of Thanos' like army and him.
Yeah. And the way he died, that was the most enjoyable thing I've ever watched.
He knew that he lost. And he just sat there calmly.
He just sat down. He knew he'd lost. He was defeated. And he just waited to die.
Exactly. And he did. Turning to dust.
So...
And
then
after that, because of all that energy that happened,
gamma radiation that went through his body,
yeah, and especially that snap,
but
it really like damaged Tony.
But there was something that they connected from when Tony discovered that he had figured out time travel, and he's telling Pepper when there's just them talking at the house, and he says, I just could put it in a lockbox and just drop it at the bottom of the lake, and she said. He said, then just go to bed. And she said, you wouldn't rest.
Oh.
And so the last thing she says to him, we're going to be okay. And then she says, you can rest now.
Her and their daughters.
And he dies. And that was, I mean, it was my reaction. Of course, it was sad.
A moment with Pepper and a moment with him and Peter. So.
My reaction, honestly, I just said, well, crap, he didn't sign a contract. He didn't sign another contract. Because I knew there was talks that he may or he may not sign a new contract, and as soon as I saw that, I said, he didn't sign the contract, he's out.
No,
and
he didn't.
I wish, because I will tell you this, when I watched that last night, and he died, I paused it.
You did.
And I went to YouTube, and I pulled up the deleted scene.
Right.
You know which one I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about.
Where Clint kneels after Tony dies. He kneels, and every one of the Avengers in turn
and we do
kneel.
see Gamora, like she just runs off, and
And I mean,
that explains like what happened to Gamora. So
why Anthony and Joe Russo chose to delete that scene is beyond. It's just beyond imagination. I don't know why they deleted that. I would, if I ever got a chance to talk to them, I would say, why did you delete that scene? Why don't you can you not release a director's cut and put that back in there?
I mean, they did that with Spider-Man Far From Home, so I don't see why they wouldn't do the same for Endgame.
Well, maybe they will.
And I'm sure there's a reason why they cut it, a good reason.
They cut, they show them, they're at Tony's house, and their house, and you see him doing the video, where he's recorded the video in case of his untimely death.
And the funeral, like that one camera shot panning at everybody.
I've watched
including
that. I have watched that camera angle, that shot, the way that was shot. It's a seamless shot from the lake panning up,
Yes.
and then panning through,
Yeah, I need
and
to
snaking
go
through
back.
the crowd of just about, I mean, a who's who of actors.
Everybody,
that are
like
standing there.
everybody from Wakanda.
Michael Douglas,
Michelle Pfeiffer.
Samuel L. Jackson, Michelle Pfeiffer.
Maria Hill, General Ross, and the kid from Iron Man 3?
Yeah, even him. And again, I did not know who that was. I said, who's that guy?
Well, again, he's the kid that helped out Tony.
Exactly. From Iron Man 3. Right.
Exactly. So it was really cool that, he was there. And also Happy being at the funeral as well.
Exactly.
And that's another thing too, like the Tony's daughter, named Morgan, is that right?
Yeah. Morgan.
Right. Moments with her were pretty funny, especially when, she overheard her father and like she says, shit.
Yeah, well, one of my favorite scenes in that movie, it's absolutely one of my favorite scenes, is when he lays her down in bed and he's sitting there, and he goes, and she says, "I love you 3,000," and then he's just like, wow. But he says, but then as he's closing the door, he says, "Go to sleep or I'll sell all your toys," and she laughs. But that is one of the funniest scenes. And from what I understand, Tony or Robert Downey Jr. suggested that line because his kids said it to him.
Okay.
And
I love you 3,000.
I love you 3,000.
Well, that's good.
And then he goes down and he tells Pepper, says, she loves me 3,000. You came in at like between 600 and 900 somewhere. It was just a great. She was Daddy's girl.
Exactly.
And that's
and even like the one moment where like when like Tony returned the shield to Steve, like mentioning like like that his daughter was this close to using it to sled. Yeah. That was pretty funny. Even the little actress like who played Morgan actually did use a Captain America shield for sledding. Yeah. Yeah, I saw that. And even say one moment between Happy and Morgan about cheeseburgers. Your dad liked cheeseburgers. Yeah. And a moment between Clint and Wanda. Mentioning of Natasha and Vision. So.
The music changed, and it just became the emotion of the music changed because it became a more the scene was very gentle because they went from this full orchestra to just this acoustical guitar playing this theme.
Yeah. And right after that long camera shot,
and it just it was just a peaceful scene between Hawkeye and Scarlet Witch.
Yeah. And the epilogue, because with all the Avengers, like Thor was like I guess heading off joining with the Guardians. Yeah. And I think was this close to kissing Valkyrie, I think.
I think he was too.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say that they.
I'm trying to remember what I was going to say, but you go ahead.
I think one of the best scenes to me, and it's when it comes to the end, is when. And I knew Steve was going to.
Well, I think I was going to mention that. Yeah,
he's taking the stones back to the different timelines.
Well, and about Thor, like, did he say? I just wanted to quickly mention. Did Thor mention something like calling themselves the Asgardians of the Galaxy?
Yes, he did. Yes,
and like who's in charge? Like either him or
they went back and forth, and he says I'm in charge, and he says yes,
and
yes, of course,
we get one line from Groot, I am Groot,
which was
wouldn't be the same without Groot saying that.
No, it wouldn't. So
the last scene
when Steve goes back in time,
to return.
Bucky knew he was not coming back.
Return all the stones.
He said, "I'm going to miss you, Betty," and he says, "Don't do anything stupid to lay back." He says, "How can I? You're taking all the stupid with you," which was the line from First Avenger, Captain America. That they always teased each other, and
they did.
So Steve goes in. Sam's saying get him back, and he's blown past his timeline, and he can't get back. He's gone intentionally. He stayed in the past to find to be with the love of his life.
Exactly.
Which we see, but before that,
like we see an old man Steve Rogers,
and that was phenomenal. That makeup, that way it was phenomenal. And then he says, are you going? He says. When he sees the wedding band. Well,
before that's brought up, like, he passes the shield to
He passes the shield to Sam, and Sam is like, he says, I'll do my best. And he says, I know you will. Mm-hmm. And he says,
exactly.
that's why you got it. That's why I gave it to you.
Exactly.
And then you see, he sees the wedding band, and he says something. However, he says, "You want to tell me about her?"
Yeah.
And he says,
no, I don't think I will.
I don't think I will. And then you hear the music.
Just messing with him, like, you know.
Kiss me once, kiss me twice, kiss me once. The old classic song
very
from the
last
40s.
shot in the 1940s.
And they're dancing in the house, man. And it couldn't have ended any better. It really couldn't have.
And sharing a kiss, and then boom, credits rolling, and all the cast, and then up to when the main Avengers and the signatures.
What would have been funny, but what would have been funny is an end scene where there's a knock on the door.
Oh yeah, this is his idea.
This was my idea. There is a knock on the door, and Steve and his love is in the. They're in the. What
yes.
the heck was the character's name? This is terrible.
Carter.
Peggy.
Carter.
Peggy. What is wrong with me? He and Peggy are in the
My
house.
gosh.
Okay. Steve and Peggy are in the house, and just maybe she's in the kitchen fixing dinner or something. Maybe he's reading a newspaper, and there's a knock at the door, and so she comes out of the kitchen and she says, "I'll get it," and he's reading the newspaper, opens the door. There stands Thor. Thor says,
"I require my hammer."
He says, "I'd like my hammer back, please."
Something like that, yeah.
I'd like my hammer back, please.
You even mentioned that to What's-in-Face, who played Hitler in Captain America: First Avenger. He laughed at it. So.
Yeah, I think I did remember saying that to him. But
yes,
it would have been an hilarious ending to that if they'd done that end scene. But all we got was the sound effect of it sounded like Tony pounding out like when he was making the first, the Mark I suit.
Exactly.
In that cave. You could hear that sound of that hammer hitting that steel. And I thought to myself, is that some kind of an Easter egg of something to come with Iron Man? I thought maybe Iron Lad, that they would get the kid that made the appearance. Maybe he was making that appearance for a reason.
Yeah.
I don't know. But anyway.
And we totally forgot to mention this. How they get the Tesseract was when they traveled in the 70s.
Sure.
A moment between Tony and his father, even though his father doesn't know it's him. A moment where Steve sees Peggy.
Right.
And a funny moment with, Hank Pym, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, being called, about some problem going on. And there were a couple of cameos in this film that were pretty funny, and including Stan Lee, of course.
Right.
Don't make war, make love. That's what he says.
No,
something about war and love.
Don't make war, make love.
That's what I said. That being his very last cameo.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really a shame. I think, hey, that was a good way to end it right there, mentioning Stan Lee. Yeah. Because
what he says is make love, not war. That's how it goes. That's how it goes.
But what a perfect way to end it right there, talk about Stan Lee. Mentioning of Jarvis, I think
and seeing Jarvis, that Jarvis was actually a real person at one, but it was also his voice, the guy who voiced Jarvis in the Iron Man movies.
Well, that wasn't Paul Bettany. That was somebody else.
Well,
but it was somebody with a British voice. That was not Paul Bettany.
Are you sure about that?
Yes, I'm sure.
Well, it sounded exactly like him.
But he had a British voice. So this other person had a British voice.
Well, I get that, but it was the same tone.
Okay, maybe we'll just have to go back and look.
All right.
But again, what a way to end it right there, talking about Stan Lee and Jarvis. Avengers Endgame, what a great MCU film this turned out to be, and to wrap up the whole Infinity Saga.
10 plus. I give it if I gave it 5 stars.
I'll give it 10 out of 10.
I'll give it 5 stars. I like to do the star rating, so I give it 5 stars. It was amazing, but it was also very gut wrenching because there was a lot of emotion in that movie.
It definitely was. And to think that, this film turned out to be 3 hours long, and I think rightfully so. Yeah. So much going on. Yeah. And any last words to say on Endgame?
Awesome movie. I've probably seen it. I saw it at the theater, I think, twice. I've seen it since then about 3 other times. So, it's 3 or 4 times. So it's one of those movies that you can sit down and watch. Just you got to be in the mood to watch it though, because it's an emotional roller coaster. Yeah. So it's not a fun movie to watch. It's really not. It is gut wrenching. It's emotional. A lot of action. It's really good. The good guys win in the end, but then some of the good guys have to give their lives in order to win. So that's.
And even I also wanted to quickly mention, I saw a video on YouTube where there was this one person who saw Avengers Endgame, and this was his first MCU film he had seen.
Exactly.
Oh, well. But anyways, any last words still?
Nope. I've summed it up. 5 stars.
10 out of 10 for me.
Masterpiece.
All right, and we'll go ahead and say goodbye, I guess.
Yeah, I must be off.
He says that for me. Thank you very much for watching. We hope you guys enjoyed our review of Avengers Endgame. You guys let us know what you thought of our review. What do you think of the movie itself? Leave comments and give this review a like as always. More reviews coming your way. They're going to be awesome. Keep looking forward. And we'll see you guys in the next video/review. Take care. Peace out. And Avengers, assemble. Yeah.